Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at a double feature, the 2006 and 2019 versions of Black Christmas. This is episode 391. We're doing just those two because we've already done the 1974 one. And so now for one episode we're going to bring the rest of Black Christmas together. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movies, we're going to be talking about them from the perspective of horror fans who have seen them. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Happy Horror Days, everyone.
Happy Horror Days. I love that. And finally, also in Denver, a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
All right. Okay. As I said, this week it's two movies. So I'm not going to do the whole thing. Basically, here's what we need to know. Black Christmas 2006 is a slasher movie that takes place largely in a sorority house where it is directed by Glenn Morgan, and of the duo of Morgan and Wong, who brought us Final Destination and a number of really great X-Files episodes. It features Lacey Chabert and Katie Cassidy and Andrea Martin as the house mother. And it clearly is a big homage to the 1974 Black Christmas, which we have done an episode on. And then with the 2019 Black Christmas is yet another remake. It was directed by Sophia Takal, and it was written by Takal and April Wolf. And it takes place more blown out on a college campus and in a number of sorority houses, but is once again a slasher movie targeting sorority sisters. Those two movies came out 13 years apart, which is really not a lot of time when you consider that the first one came out in 1974. But there's a lot of big differences and things that we can point out and stuff that people say that maybe was right or wrong. I can't wait to discuss these, and it'll be such a fun double feature for somebody to go out and do. So
if people like this format, by the way, of us comparing different versions of something,
Yeah.
please let us know on the social media, because this is an experiment. So
Yes.
let us know if this is something you'd like us to take a crack at again.
Experiment is actually a wonderful way to put it. Okay, so let's get our opening thoughts, and I think the way to do that would be to say which one you tended to prefer. We'll go into the strengths and weaknesses of each one, but just from the top, we'll go Julia, Tony, and I think, so let's do Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. So, Julia, opening thoughts, and which one did you tend to prefer?
It's a tough question because there's a lot of things I liked about the second one. I probably tended to prefer the third, I should say the third one, the 2019. But there's actually some really interesting things about the 2006 as well. So the 2019, what's nice about it, and I know you like this as well, Jason, is that it takes place in on a lot more sets. It's not just one house; it's the whole campus.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more kind of going on. There's Carrie Elwes, who I'm a big fan of, but I think the 2006 one feels more like a traditional kind of serial killer, not serial killer, slasher film, where
Mhm.
it's like, there's tops two people, doing the crimes as opposed to a group of people. So I think, just as far as traditional slasher films go, 2006 one is definitely that, but there's a lot of neat stuff about both. And then there's, just a lot of dumb stuff about both, which you might expect in something like this. But I think they're both very enjoyable. There's some great shots in both films. Like the 2019 has that gorgeous snow angel shot where
Mhm.
she's he kills somebody, and she looks to make a snow angel, and then he drags her off, and it's just this beautiful shot. And then there's some really neat ideas in the first one. So I mean, the first of the ones I'm gonna try to remember to say 2006 instead of the first one. But yeah, I think they're both really really interesting.
Wonderful. Tony, what about you? What are your thoughts? And
I
what did you think about
vastly
having to do this?
Oh, I think it's cool. I mean, we skipped a week, so it made sense.
Mhm.
Like, this is gonna be. I'm guessing this is our last show of the year. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So doing a double feature is cool. I do like doing compare and contrast. I vastly prefer the 2019 one.
Yeah?
I think the 2006 one is a nice kind of remake. It's a slasher movie. I think I don't like any of the characters really. I think they're all. It feels very to me very. I'd say this. How do I put this? But it feels kind of like it's trying to capture the Scream movies in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah.
And I don't. That's good. I mean, I when I say these things, it's just these are my impressions. I don't have a judgment of like that this is good or bad. I really feel like it's a very. It feels a little bit cynical to me, and I think that it's an interesting. Like it is a good anti-Christmas horror movie, anti-capitalist Christmas horror movie, right? I think that it's kind of it's a really good gorehound movie for sure. I felt it was a little kind of convoluted, and I don't mean that horror can't be complicated or complex or layered, but I feel like it felt a little muddled in the way that some of the storytelling happens, and then kind of some of the twists are like, okay, I guess to me,
right?
But the gore that's there and the hey, let's watch a movie where people jerky people bite it on Christmas. If you're in for that kind of like, because there's always been that kind of subversive nature of horror, right?
Yeah.
So a subversive Christmas movie fits in with horror fantastically. So I totally get why you would make this movie, why you remake this movie, how it exists. It's a gorehound kind of like, oh man, those kills, right? Because there are many and they are pretty over the top.
Yeah.
But I prefer the intent and overall feel of the 2019 one. Although I will say that if you're looking for a closer to the original 74, if you're looking for the slasher version, I don't think that the 2019 one is as much of the slasher version. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
And so your mileage may vary in what you want as a horror fan. And I think you can watch both as a horror fan, right? But if you're depending on what you want, they deliver vastly different experiences, in my opinion.
Awesome. Drew, what would you add to that?
Well, I think that it's cool that there are 3 movies that are called Black Christmas, and they are all very different from each other, even though they are all, if you were to describe the plot, it is murders in a college around Christmas time, and that sounds on paper very very similar to each other, but all of these movies are vastly different in tone and style from one another, and I enjoy all 3 of them. With the comparing the 2 that we're talking about today, I really like both of them. I think I'm probably coming down, enjoying these movies probably the most out of everybody that spoke so far. If I have to pick, I guess the sort of ghoulishness, sort of like Tales from the Crypt vibe, like that sort of, over the top color and, gore, like Tony was talking. I think the 2006 probably speaks more to my horror fan heart at the end of the day, because it's got this like garish, sort of gleeful, in your faceness about it, which I like. But the 2019 movie is also a really interesting film with a lot of great stuff about it. So it's like it's kind of difficult for me to choose, but so like I it's like a razor thin margin, because I enjoy both of them quite a bit. But I guess the style of the 2006 is the 2006 aesthetically
Mm.
has style to burn. Like it has this wonderful use of color about
Yes,
it,
it sure does.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that probably pushes it over the finish line for me. But gosh, it's tough. I really like both of these movies. I had a good time revisiting them for this.
What one thing that I think is so me personally, I would say that I love the 2019 one more for a lot of reasons because I just I like how it's a much bigger movie and it has a feeling of just multiple spaces and I could tell the characters apart a little bit better and so forth. But on the other hand, um I'm really disappointed by the last like 20 minutes or so of the 2019 movie because I feel like it breaks certain rules of serial killer movies.
See, I love the last 20 minutes, and
Oh, really?
I want to talk
Yeah.
All right.
more
Well,
about the
we'll get to that.
about the ending and what I wanted because I think, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
this was one of the last movies I saw in the theater before a lot of things started getting locked down,
Huh.
if I remember correctly.
It might. I mean, I
2019
often.
leading into 2020, right? Which is
Yeah. In
because
2020, March 2020, it might be in your memory. I don't know if it
well,
actually would
I
line up
didn't
that
get to
way.
go to the movies a lot between them for various reasons, but
Yeah.
I saw it at a very late night screening at the Draft House, and I
You're right. It was
remember.
Christmas time in 2019.
I bet you that was a lot of fun.
So it was 3 months
Yeah, I
before
mean, I
the
remember coming
lockdown.
out of that like, oh man, I know the movie. I want to see it. I want to see the movie that's after this, and I don't think they'll ever make the movie I wanted to see and make.
Okay,
Yeah, I want
we'll
to
have
talk
to
about
talk
more
about that.
about that
Yeah.
later.
Okay. So first, I just want to talk about shared elements. All right. The elements that do repeat are I think Drew pretty much hit it already, but there's always in a Black Christmas movie, like what makes a Black Christmas movie? There's always a sorority house, at least, with sorority sisters being stalked. That is a must. Whatever you think of sorority sisters, or however much you get to see the world of the Greek system. Anyway, it's sorority sisters in a house to being stalked. There is an element from the first movie that all the movies repeat, which is the damn rocking chair with a body in the attic. I think that is great. I really love that. It's like an Easter egg that so far both of the remakes have done, where you've got it. And in fact, being suffocated with a bag is also an element that gets used in both of them. And the other element that I was thinking of is they all have an element of stalking and repeating phrases back to the person you're stalking as
Yeah,
a
so
means.
in the 2006, it's the phone calls where he's saying, lines that he's heard them say, and like, she's my family now, and then he'll say something that they said. Whereas, of course, in the 2019, it's texts, same idea,
Right.
just repeating the things.
Same concept. So that's really neat. But I think it was Drew. You were saying on paper they sound the same, and it does feel like if you gave somebody a brief and say go make a slasher movie, it has to include these elements. These two movies show you how different that can get.
Well,
Uh,
it's about creative
yeah.
choices, I think, because like if we were to look at this as a franchise, the same way
Yes.
like say Nightmare on Elm Street is a franchise. There's like certain elements that have to recur, like you're talking about, but way these go about like updating stuff from the 74 is interesting because like the phone call stuff is baked right into the original thing, but they keep pushing it forward into the 21st
Yes.
century with the way technology has changed, and yet they found smart ways to keep a phone in the DNA
Yes.
of what this is.
Isn't
Now,
that funny?
the cell phone thing, one thing that's annoying about movies that are made post cell phone is that they always have to figure out a way to dispense with the cell phone. And the whole idea in the 2019 version where they all dropped their phones when they got scared is so dumb. I was just so irritated by that. I was like, come on, let's just have it be the traditional, oh, we get crap reception here instead of, oh, we all
Yeah.
dropped our phones on the floor.
That was really funny. Well, they all go, huh, we all dropped our phone in the living room.
My goodness.
That was really great. So things I wanted to contrast and compare. One thing I noticed is that in the sisters, the sorority sisters in 2006 are very different from the sorority sisters of 2019. Like for instance, in 2006, We only see them on Christmas Eve, and we see the ones that are left after a bunch of the others have already gone home for Christmas. But they are all, and I think, Tony, this is kind of what you were talking about in this Scream universe. They're all sort of like very ironic, snide. I'm saying this, I'm not dissing them, okay? It's okay, but they are. They're ironic, sarcastic, snide. They're all like,
Well,
laying on the
I mean,
couch, and yeah.
it feels very like, hey, you're in the movie where it's the most cynical about Christmas.
Yes.
And that's the thrust. I don't mean like, oh great, a darker Christmas. I mean, it's called
Tell me
Black
some more about that,
Christmas,
because there is a lot of cynicism about Christmas in the
yeah,
2006
I mean, I
movie.
get it. Like,
So-
and this is like, because also, horror is that mirror again, where for a lot of people, going and staying and do it, like the capitalist Christmas business is a drag for tons of people. If you're disassociated from your family, they
Mhm.
kind of suck, or maybe you've had a bad time, or maybe you didn't ever really celebrate it because we had some lean Christmases. I think a lot of the Christmas horror exists for a world where you're like, yes, this is my Christmas. It's like, screw this capitalist Coca-Cola Santa Christmas, right?
Well,
this is kind of for that. It's all, I mean, it's for everybody. Like, you can just enjoy a good slasher flick, right? But we're supposed to kind of be mirrored of like, hey, this is a pagan holiday, etc. But it's, I mean, the deal is a lot of it's, I mean, really, really on the nose. And that's okay.
They never mention Michelle Trachtenberg is Jewish, and I don't remember her ever even bothering to give us a line over that Christmas may not be all that important to her as a Jewish
Right,
person.
good point.
Sure.
No, I did see that apparently they tried to, and this is not an excuse, because
Okay.
you can differentiate characters and still write them to be equally important. But the idea is that they tried to make them all kind of so that it wasn't evident which one would be the final girl. They were trying to keep that suspense up. So they tried to make them all equally, characterize them all equally, but they didn't differentiate them. So
Well, the
there's
problem
not
is they characterize them all exactly. Like they're all
exactly the
like
same. Yeah,
they,
yeah, yeah.
they're all
some of
sarcastic.
that, some of that, I think, like Tony name dropped Scream, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm also thinking, watching this and the way that the girls are portrayed here versus the 2019, it was very much like post Buffy, post Mean Girls, like where we would have a lot of characters like this, which were like fun but bitchy kind of
Yes.
characters, because it was a good excuse for writing biting
Yeah, that's right.
dialogue, which is a very 2000 Bush era kind of vibe. And you compare that to the 2019, where first of all, the way young people act is constantly evolving, but aside from that, like, I think, Jason, you were the one to say it. You're not wrong in saying that the 2019 characters are a little bit more. They have a little bit more dimension to them.
Yeah,
they don't seem quite as cartoonish.
Well, and what's funny though is if you hear people in everyday conversation compare these two. I have, and I know this is walking on thin ice to talk about this, but I've heard a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't like the 2019 one because that's the one where they're all woke." But I gotta say, they're interesting. Like the 2019, whether you kind of agree with college.
Well, I disagree
politics,
that they're all woke. I think one of them is woke, and the
Right.
other ones are just regular people from.
Right. They do
Also-
have a very modern
also,
discourse.
I
Yeah.
see, when I watched it, I could tell people are gonna claim that.
Right.
And you know what? Just
Yeah.
spare me as my eyes fucking roll out of my head.
Yeah.
They're all woke. Like, oh yeah, how many
You
of
have
my
one
how many of
character
my
that is-
friends how many of my friends have been stalked? How
Right.
many people, like, all the stuff that they're bringing up, if you don't understand, in fact, to the point in the 2019 one where they actually have a guy go, not all guys,
Right.
just to show that we're not talking about you.
Yeah.
We're not fucking talking about you, my friend. They had that argument. Like,
Yeah.
like they literally have that guy, because that's what it takes. You have to be that on the nose,
Well, I also enjoy the fact that in the 2019 one,
but that is
go ahead. All right.
well, that is you compare and contrast. Like the 2019 one is satirical, like it
Right.
it's taking on the misogyny that is get a lot of people, look,
Yeah.
I didn't go to college, so I can't comment on it, but I hear this a lot that there, within the Greek system, there's a lot of, issues with that. And whereas like the 2006 one it's just there to gross you out. Like
Right.
it's there for the slasher movie element of it.
It doesn't
and-
have any opinion about like what that's what's fascinating, is that in the 2019 one, these girls sort of exist before the movie starts, and they're going to keep those who are alive will keep existing afterwards. They've got other shit to talk about. They argue with one another about stuff that is like, they argue with one another about ideas. And it didn't even occur to me that was missing from slasher films, but it's fascinating.
I will say this, as far as like the quote unquote wokeness of the characters, the activist character, which by the way, having a bunch of college age young women and having one of them be an activist, that's entirely realistic.
Totally,
But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But they aren't entirely uncritical of her. Like, she doesn't
No, that's what's
escape
great.
unscathed. Like there's the whole argument that like she puts that video up on YouTube without getting consent from her friend. So like she's not like a cardboard cutout, like where she's like flawless. Like the one-dimensional aspect of the girls in the 2006 is because it's a slasher movie, and they're there to
be slashed.
they're there to be slashed.
Exactly.
It's okay to want to watch something that's just brainless and fun, but it's also okay to for a horror movie to try and be a little bit more cerebral, which the 2019 one is definitely trying for.
Do you think what strikes me is that with the 2006 one, it is a really good, probably final version of a cycle. So if there's this cycle that starts in 1996 with Scream, and I agree with Tony completely that this is part of it, 2006 is 10 years later, and we're kind of coming to the end of that cycle. In other words, I think it's a very, very good example of basically as hip and sarcastic as you can make a slasher movie. I want to move on to the way we can keep coming back to these characters, because I think it's worth doing. But one thing that strikes me is the way that Christmas is presented. I've never been more grossed out by Christmas than in the 2006 movie. Like the tinsel. First of all, in all the flashbacks with this horrible rapist, cheating, murdering, chain smoking,
Mom.
jowly mom, she just like she's lit with these green lights that make her look like the Grinch, and the tree is covered in tinsel, which in this movie kind of stands for seediness, which I think is funny. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I don't know how exactly, but yeah,
it's like the cynicism of it, because it's in the flashbacks, which there are a lot of, and that's part of why it's I don't know, the structure wise it's strange, but it's part of it is the twist on the family. So you have, if you over tinsel something, like the tawdriness of it is
right.
Hey, we're enjoying Christmas, right? Like it's Christmas as a thing, as opposed to like, hey, look, we all decorate the tree and it's really nice.
Well, and it's funny that you hit Christmas that way, because there's actually a lot of a Christmas Story homages in here because of whoever it is that was
Bob
Clark. And Bob Clark, and you were like, you said Christmas,
Right.
and it reminded me so much of the way she says it. Actually, no, that's Better Off Dead. But yes, same idea.
Yeah, but it the difference between a kind of forced idea of Christmas, and again, this is kind of why you watch a horror movie deconstruction of Christmas, is you kind of want to see a little bit of the like stab, like you want to take a little stab both figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want some human flesh cookies,
Exactly.
Like,
oh man.
That's one of the things I do. I mean, I hate to say this because I don't like gory things, but I do appreciate original things about killings and about the serial kills, and the fact that he makes cookies with the cookie cutter out of human flesh is really creative. That's not something I've seen before.
I mean, with I kind of have a different reaction lately
Hmm.
about the kind of the dark goriness of it, and I totally get like this is on me and not on anybody who enjoys the 2006 one. But I mean, it becomes over the top, and that's great. But it's a mean, nasty Christmas.
Well, yeah, nobody
And
wants
I,
to look at an unhappy family, right? We can't really laugh. You can't really laugh, right, at a family that's miserable and a kid that's like it's not. And this is what Morgan and Wong were good at in X Files. They were always giving us these really creepy ass small towns and families and
Mhm.
stuff and it's Mulder and Scully could sort of swoop in and walk around in their nice coats and see all that and then leave. It's because it's a bummer. I mean, no, yeah.
Well, I think the cartoonishness of this, because I've been thinking about that for several days. Because
Mm,
yeah, child abuse is absolutely not funny, but this movie is funny, and
yeah.
I think it's the way they use color and everything, and sort of like the way they use the Christmas decorations, like you were just talking about, makes it. Yes, it's a very mean spirited movie, but it's so relentlessly over the top. It's
Yeah.
Mhm.
hard to get too invested in the reality of
Mm,
anything that's
Well,
going on. At least for me, like
I
the
I
the
I agree with that, but I also think it's cool that we have some sympathy for the killer. Like another,
yeah.
I appreciate that when we get some background on the killer, because then you're like, oh, this is it. This guy has comes by it honest, basically. You know what I mean?
sure.
But so he's still horrible, but I get it a little bit more.
Well,
Yeah.
also like it's funny. It's like this is not one of the ones we're reviewing, but thinking about the 1974 one where the it's like they took the sort of ramblings that the killer in the 74 movie was like screaming over the phone and
Yeah.
created this
They
backstory
managed to
out of
string a
it.
story together that made it make sense. Because Julia, I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember this, but for the reader, they never, ever, ever explain in the 1974 one what the hell the killer is saying about
Right.
Agnes. What happened to Agnes? And blah blah blah. I like nobody, nobody
It makes
knows.
no sense within the context of the movie. And
Yeah,
the killer's never caught or anything. He's just sort of there.
we just leave.
Um,
Eventually, we just leave the scene. Yeah,
yeah.
it's weird. So yeah, this one. I also you mentioned EC and Tales from the Crypt. I think you're right. I think that Morgan and Wong are kind of giving us a goofy Tales from the because the guy's colored yellow.
Yes.
His sister is his daughter, and she's missing an eye because he took out her eye. I mean,
Well, and
you know,
wait, but back up a little, because if you are going to do some background, you should do the background, which is he was born. Yeah, he was born with the liver disease. He was yellow. The mom never liked him. She never liked his dad, and always associated them with each other. Then she and her lover kill the dad, who was the only person who was ever nice to him. And because he sees them burying the body, they imprison. Well, because that, and because she hates him, they imprison him in the attic and never even tell him he has that never even tell his sister slash daughter about him. And So that's that background. But I just wanted to give a little bit more. He's
yeah,
not just randomly yellow. He's yellow
you're right.
because he was born with that liver disease.
But it's crazy that you wind up with something that sounds like a campfire tale, a bright. He looks like the Creeper from DC Comics. He has this he has this yellow green skin, and his sister, who plays the sister, by the way. The sister appears to
Your
be played by
intent,
the
you're
same
meant to
actor.
be confused, because yeah, the whole point is that you never know who the killer. You're never supposed to know who the killer is, because the sister is masculine, also. And
Mm.
so I think there's actually maybe a
Thank you for
couple different
explaining that
people.
to me. I was
But yeah,
wondering about that.
that was the whole point, was that what is her name? Agnes. So
Yes.
Agnes, hang on a second, let me just find
Oh,
out
here
who
we
is
go.
playing it. Yeah,
Is played
Dean
by
Friss.
Dean Friss, who is
Right, he's the
a
camera
male
operator.
performer. Oh,
No, he was just a camera operator. He had no prior acting experience. And then they decided to cast him as Agnes so that the characters could be interchangeable, and you would never figure
there
out who
are
was
tricks
which.
that the movie does also that makes us think. I mean, they give us some mystery for a while because for a while you think that the town, the the dude Kyle, who is secretly taping himself having sex with a sorority sister that is not his girlfriend. We think for a moment that maybe he's the killer. We think that for a moment that awkward Eve, who is a sorority sister in the house, might be the killer. And those are red herrings because neither of them, they both wind up victims in this. Both of these movies, 2006 and 2019, they both do this thing that movies often do where they're like, okay, we're going to act 3 now, so it's going to be a totally different set. And the 2006 one does it in a way that I sort of associate with movies of that era more than now, which is to say it's a complete 90-degree turn. They move the action to a hospital. So the big grand finale will take place in the hospital. And in the 2019, they moved to a different house. But did you feel? Am I the only one who feels? I feel like kind of like taken out of it when we reach that point where we're like, oh, now we're in another episode. I'm almost like, I guess I can stop the movie and come back to this tomorrow because it doesn't work for me when you have such a radical shift to Act 3.
It doesn't bother me the slightest.
I don't have any problems.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. I mean, the setup for the 2019 one allows for that.
Yeah.
The setup for the 2006 version, it would be even. It's weirder. Like I don't know. I don't have a problem, but it depends on. I mean, really, just to me, that all depends on intent. Like if it feels like radically, like now we're in Austria, like what?
Yeah.
I get it, but I don't know. It doesn't. It just
the
depends. It depends on intent.
The hospital setting doesn't bother me, I guess, because it's a perfectly logical place for all these characters to end up.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So yeah, this is purely an aesthetic.
But if you're talking about like, are you talking about the twist with the 2019 one? Is that?
No, I'm talking about how annoying it is to me. Having said that, I feel like the 2006 one is bound in like too much in just one place. That can be really great in a film where they decide, you know what, let's going to put this whole thing basically in one house. That's okay. But I can feel the clunkiness of it. It's like, oh, here comes Act 3. Let's move all the characters to a different set to have all the action take place there. It just feels very.
I think it just has to be done more gracefully than maybe it was here, because if you have everything where it makes sense to move, then I think it works fine. But if it's suddenly like, wait, why did everybody go, or why is like anything like that, where I can't.
I mean, really, I think I'm wrong. I mean, I as I think about it, it just moves. So yeah, I'm gonna take.
Well,
I'm gonna take
maybe
away
maybe
that
this is a thematic thing here, because like these are college stories. You want the ending to be in a college.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that might explain why it feels almost like another movie to me. Yeah, there are definitely reshoots going on here, and we learned the most interesting thing about the 2006 one. I have not seen the trailer, but apparently the 2006 trailer features so many scenes shot strictly for the trailer that it almost seems like it's for a completely different movie.
I did watch the trailer right before we got on because we talked about that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one thing where somebody's arm comes up like out of the ground, which I was like, wait, is that? I don't think that's in the movie. And then a la like
Carrie.
No,
Yeah.
well, I was gonna say, yeah, Carrie is the original, but I was gonna say, what's his name from Patrick Muldoon from?
Oh yeah, Melrose Place. Sure.
Anyway, yeah, and then there's that thing that you talked about where Billy's like suspended on the ceiling or whatever,
Yes.
which is just super weird. So yeah, it is kind of odd, but mostly it looks like In fact, I watched that trailer and I was like, oh yeah, literally, because we watched this movie last week, and so I was like, oh yeah, I'd already forgotten that happened. So there was a couple things, but
Michelle
it's a
Trachtenberg
good
with a
trailer.
shotgun. There was a girl under the ice.
Yeah, Girl Under the Ice. Yeah, that was the other thing. I was like, what the?
Yeah.
So
at least it kept me guessing.
Because it's on the trailer is on the IMDb. Yeah, so you can watch it there.
Okay, I gotta check that out. Yes. All right. So we were talking about the presentation of Christmas in 2006. In 2019, the Christmas aspect of it is really it doesn't really drive the plot very much. Honestly, this could be any. It's weird that it's a 2019 movie because in visual, it looks like it could be any number of 1990s college movies, or school kind of stuff. It also still wears a lot of Scream influences.
I mean, I would say yes, but I think the look of it is definitely not like it's definitely 2019.
Talk to
How
me
it's
more about
lensed,
that. Like,
it's a little bit. It's a lot more muted for one thing.
mm,
It's different, but I think just the way it's shot feels
mm,
a lot 2019. There's also, I felt like there were occasional kind of like House of the Devil style
huh?
nods, so like forward and then back. Like when we see, for example, one of the victims outside, dead outside, but like nobody can see because of how she's placed, that kind of
Right,
stuff.
right, right.
That
That
those
was cool.
there's like, but I think the flavor, I mean, and again, we're now 13 years later, so the while some people could say, hey, this feels forced or not or whatever, we're 13 years later, the concerns that people have,
Yeah.
just 13 years later in college is quite a while, right?
Well,
Just in college age, much less the world moving on. And so but I also think the way it's filmed feels a lot less. Just the
let me
choices
let
of
me ask you
how
something.
to color grade it, how it's shot, feel a lot less Scream, like a lot.
Okay,
Well,
It's more
okay, fair.
it's
yeah.
definitely more naturalistic
Yes,
looking, because like the 2006, as we keep pointing out, is very colorful.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's
it's
like the
very
saturation's
style.
just
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
it's
you just pull it all the way
super
to the right,
stylized.
and
Yeah,
that's
That's a
like
cool. I
really,
mean,
really good
that's a
point.
hallmark of how it looks, right? Like that's
yeah.
the vibe of that movie.
And this is, this is a non-horror thing, but I keep thinking about like Christopher Nolan a lot looking at this movie.
Yeah, but it's a lot more muted. It's like almost the opposite. It's like if you have
Yeah, it's pretty
two
gray. There's
filters,
there, yeah, yeah.
But
there's a saturation of the 2006 one that's then pulled to the, I keep using the left and right as you
Yes,
filter things on your phone, right? It's like you pull it less saturated to the left, you get kind of
yeah.
that mid ground that a lot of this is, but it is colorful when it needs to be. That's the thing. So we're using heightened color in the during the dance sequence, for example,
Hmm.
or in some of the rooms where you need a warmer, or where there's fire, where, so it's pulled back on the parts that need to be cold
Hmm.
and pushed in the parts that where you actually need warmth, and it uses that for contrast.
well,
I think that's one of the big differences. Is so you have this like slightly lighter moment that turns darker. So, and all the you have bits of that in even the opening sequence. So the kill is a little bit more muted, but in parts where there needs to be color, like, oh, this could this be safer, you actually bring that forward.
well,
I,
And
I
those
I
are,
just want to
really
mention.
conscious decisions, as opposed to we're going to, for better or worse, this isn't really a knock, but the 2006 one is like, we're going to make this something, like you're in this, and here's the experience you're having.
I think as far as like Christmas, I kind of, like things we associate with Christmas. If we were to compare the two, I think the 2006 is a blinking Christmas light, and the
Colorful,
2019, yeah,
colorful blinking
2019
Christmas.
is either a gray sky or a warm fireplace. Like
Yeah.
like they're both playing with things we associate with the season for
Mhm.
their visual palette, just in different ways.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out real quick, and this fascinates me, really, really genuinely fascinates me. But setting aside, ignoring completely inflation, the budget for the 2006 movie with Andrea Martin as the house mother. This is a Dimension film made by the Weinsteins. It was made. That's 2006, made for $9 million. All right. The Blumhouse movie from 2019 was made for $5 million. But I have to tell you, the
It looks
2019
way more
movie,
expensive.
it looks much more expensive. Think about it. There's the coffee shop. There's multiple houses that they're
On the whole
in,
campus, yeah.
multiple the sets, like I understand a lot of this is movie magic, and you can use the same places to be multiple places, but somehow that $5 million stretches a lot farther. You have a much bigger world. I'm. This is not a judgment. I'm
I
just saying
think
it's
though that
interesting.
the 2006 one does feel like it has a lot more special effect in it than
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah, more memorable special effects for sure.
Yeah, I do feel bad that Andrea Martin, who is a neat character, and it's very cool to have her around because she was
Because she was
she
yeah,
was in
she
the
was in
74 one.
right, right.
The script doesn't really know what to do with her, and they have to get rid of her, so she gets killed by an errant icicle. That's
Which again, probably homage to Christmas Story, because in the Christmas Story she says, "Be careful about icicles; they've been known to kill people."
Are you serious?
That's what
She's
I mean. That's a suggestion that IMDb made, just that was an homage to that.
I have no memory of that. I'll take your word for it. That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, she says that in a
In the
Christmas story?
no, the mom says it in the Christmas Story,
Oh, yeah.
and so a lot of the movie is an homage to Christmas Story.
Okay, now that does make sense. All right. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. It's still kind of you kind of wish that this character so I get it, you're going to
She
waste a
deserves a better
character on a
death. You're saying, yeah,
yeah.
I get it.
You're going to waste a character on a gag, but I liked having the character around. So yes, let's talk about the ending. I if not for the end, and Tony likes it. So if not for the
I
ending,
do as well, Jason. I have to say.
so the reason I don't like the 20, if you were to pitch it to me, right, as an editor and say, and then what they find out is that actually there's multiple killers because evil patriarchy dudes are using magic mud to make killer zombies out of frat boys. Actually saying it that way sounds better than to me it actually comes out. Like it just feels too magic and everything. And I'm like, that's
It is
changing the
Matt.
rule.
It's not changing the rules because it's its own thing. Like every one of these is different from one another. So
Mm.
the fact that the 2019 one wants to be like a full on supernatural horror movie
Yeah.
is fine.
Well, do you
And
feel like as a storyteller, I think what I'm wondering is if that's where we're going, shouldn't you be setting it up like an hour earlier, like
they
just
are.
giving
They're
a hint
setting it
that
up
They
throughout the
do.
movie.
But people, I mean, the guy has the headache. Like I do agree in retrospect, seeing it a second time,
Mm.
that it's possible they could have let it a little bit more or done more with the supernatural satanic part
Yeah.
of it. Like I kind of am with you there that perhaps we could use more of the setup, but they're doing it throughout. I mean,
Yeah, because they have the
there's
thing about the
reveal.
bust. Yeah, because it turns out that the guy, part of the wokeness, I guess, is that the guy that the campus is named after was like a slave owner and just kind of a horrible person, and so they've removed the bust
Also
from the camp.
apparently a necromancer.
Yes,
Yeah.
all of that. And so they removed the bust, and now the bust shows up at the fraternity house, and they're doing. But I agree with Jason, though. The whole thing with the stupid bust being full of magical oil just really annoyed me. I was like,
Well,
come on, you
if
could
you
have
had
been more creative
the funny
than
thing
that.
is, if somebody had said intoned early on, also that, or maybe slipped in, I don't know, that also he was rumored to be a necromancer.
They
All of
do
it,
say that though.
they do. I had
Yeah.
no, did not, so I just missed it. Okay.
Yeah, like it's
for-
all there's
set
To
up
me, it's the
strong.
black oil thing is the dumb part. The thing that
I
where
don't
they
know,
have
that didn't
magic
bother me.
oil that's filled up.
we
filled
watch
with-
movies with nuttier setups all the time.
And I
don't
probably
know,
That's
like,
complain about
totally
those
true.
too.
fair.
But I mean,
and-
but even
Uh,
then we see part of that ritual. It's not like they're black oil, like they're actually putting it on. They're taking a
No,
thing,
I get
and they're
it.
putting it on people, and then later on, another guy's having.
Well, your mileage may vary. I mean, I just
Like, I mean,
don't care for
but
that
I
part.
get it. But it's not like they're not showing you
I am
all of
oh,
that throughout the movie. In my
I
opinion.
am okay with this because we already have two versions of Black Christmas with a mortal
Yeah, that's true.
serial killer. I'm okay with getting a version that is one step removed with an evil satanic frat boy cult.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, like I'm sure there's probably, thinking about it, from a writer's perspective, I'm sure there's also probably supposed to be a metaphor there about, every man's struggle.
Oh, there is.
With
Yeah. No,
misogyny.
it's good. I think I'm just saying me personally, I would have liked to have known, and maybe this is a weakness on my part. Look, I totally grant you that maybe what I'm saying would make it a weaker piece of work. But I would have liked it if there had been a lot of giant signposts early on suggesting that we're going somewhere supernatural. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
And
I didn't get that.
I think that's cool, but I want to wait, Drew. I want to back up though and get into what you were just saying, because I think that's the kind of the thesis of the whole film. Is it's kind of like Stepford Wives in that the idea is that men are going to really all men, not hashtag not hashtag not all men, but all men have a resentment of the fact that now they're not allowed to, be how they want to be without maybe getting in trouble. Like they always have to be walking on eggshells, basically. So I'm curious what you guys think about all that, because it does kind of imply, because even the guy who's the sweet guy, I forget the last kid's name that becomes
Yeah.
hypnotized or whatever. But anyway, he's super
Brainwashed.
nice. The black kid, I think it's important that he's the black kid, because they're like, the black kid's the nice one.
Yeah,
But anyway,
Landon
even
is his name.
even Landon eventually gets turned. So the idea is really all guys, if they're around enough other toxic, toxicity, can be kind of turned to this idea that women do suck.
Right.
So I'm curious what you guys thought about that.
I think that that's a fair argument. That like kind of getting through the cultural minefield of modern day. Like you have to be very self-aware, and you have to constantly be looking within yourself and thinking about what your values are and everything, because there is a lot of voices out there that could try and bring something out in you. And maybe that's why they chose Toxic Looking Sludge. I mean, I don't know.
And isn't
Yeah.
horror the way to bring these things up?
Yeah,
totally.
No, I thought it was really interesting. I actually thought that was the most interesting about the film, was the whole exploration of that topic.
No, I dig it too.
I've been at a bunch of companies. For a long time, the games industry was very broy, and I've seen a lot of stuff that would not be acceptable. And I think, again, this is what the movie's bringing up. And I get it. If you don't want to be along for the ride for that, this isn't the movie for you, right? But I also think it's a horror movie that has a lot of this is the thesis. And yes, we do have to think a lot about these things, but we should.
I'm happy.
I think we should.
Absolutely.
I think maybe now is the time to do a little bit more self-reflection.
Well, and that's what I was going to say earlier when you're talking about whether this feels like a 2019 movie or not. That is a very 2019, Me Too movement kind of thesis for the film to have.
Sure. And I get that not everybody's going to want that, but I personally, I would rather. Maybe, and again, movies are what you bring to the table, right? I would rather think about these things and try to be a better person and a better friend and a better ally to people who also may be, like I grew up, this well documented. I grew up in a small town, was, Broham guys, tried to, beat me up and hated on me. I'm not a fan of the frat system at all and everything it brings. Had some crazy run-ins when I was in Savannah, from, big fratty type people. Actually, it was Army Ranger people. But, I'm kind of okay with like, hey, let's take a step back and think about these things. And I think horror is a great way to do that.
I want to say that that's something I appreciate about you guys, about the three of you, and about our friends over at Monster Movie Happy Hour, is that you guys really are just genuinely good, all three of you, great human beings who genuinely care about women. Like, you don't just go, women, they're good to have sex with, but who needs them? It's kind of like, it's like, no, you actually genuinely care and want to make our world a better place. So I appreciate that.
That's very kind.
I
really appreciate it.
can't say that I've never made any kind of mistakes throughout, right? But again, this is why we have a movie like this, is because you can go, I should think more. Like,
so to what you're saying, Tony, though, even though this movie deals with a lot of heavy topics, and it does, it's not a drag the watch. It's a fun movie. Like,
absolutely.
It clips along nicely. It's a fun, like, if you are a horror fan and you want, like, because there are definitely horror movies that come out that are really heavy, and this one really, this could have been that, but it's not.
I think it strikes a balance, and I think it it has a lot of also the difference is a lot of the hunting stuff comes from a lot of the similar movies. This, I mean, it has what we just decided, like, oh well, look, one of the hunters, one of the frat guys is an archer.
Yes,
And we're just gonna have that. Like,
Oh my
what?
god.
I loved that. Yeah. I mean, look, honestly, I'll say, I definitely prefer the 2019 version. There are tweaks that, from what I was complaining about earlier, as far as it suddenly gets way more supernatural. But even so, that's just a matter of I would have reorganized it a little bit. But it still, I think, succeeds a lot more. To me, it succeeds more than in the 2006. And even having said that, I know that you guys kind of feel the way I do. They're both pretty good. I mean, they'd still make I recommend that our listeners watch both of them. So it doesn't mean that I would
Actually, this probably makes a pretty good double feature, since I'm in double feature land with Ready or
Why
Not.
not just go for broke and do a Black Christmas triple feature?
Yeah, well, I think this and Ready or Not would make a good double bill.
Oh,
sure.
Well,
yeah.
And like I was saying though, to me, 2019 Black Christmas makes a good double feature with Stepford Wives.
I think
It
also
really does.
that's just
Yeah,
like
Stepford
this
Bros.
It's very similar.
Yeah, no, I'm with
Yeah.
you.
I think that's a really good observation, Julia. Like it's kind of saying some of the same things but brainwashing different people.
Also,
Yeah.
by the way, like I also just the whole teacher dynamic. We had good friends who spoke out against a teacher in a department. And I had other friends who had to also get questioned. And from a time when some friends of mine were going to college, and basically eventually, like, there were multiple like accounts of this teacher just being awful and taking advantage, and casting couch kind of things going on. And they just, because he was powerful enough and rich people liked him enough and he was in the society enough, he basically just got a slap on the wrist, and then he got to just, well, I'm retiring.
Yeah, well, that's what happens
and
with
it's like,
what happens with clergy. It's what happens with people like Bill Cosby, who everybody's like, oh no, he's a good guy. I don't know what you're talking about. Just don't even say that.
And just seeing that, but also the fact that he was a professor, seeing the professor in this, like I said, you bring movies, you bring a lot of what you've experienced into the movie, and I'm
although it would have been twistier
when he gets it, I'm just like, hell yeah.
Okay, and so that I could see having a debate where you're like, I get it, and we totally want that guy to stand for something as a symbol, and also see him and then have him get killed. But on the other hand, it would have been twistier for him to turn out to be a good guy. This
wasn't that movie. I mean, I guess it really depends on what movie you're kind of going for.
Yeah,
and this just wasn't it.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Carrie Elways doesn't get to play villains often, but I just want to praise his acting. He's not actually in the movie a whole lot.
You're right.
But
That's totally true.
He manages to be very menacing.
Sleazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And all of his belief is like, no, it's gonna be a better world. Like, trust me. Like, you see how the world is. Like, wouldn't it be better? And it's like, oh, why? Yeah, that's how people get away with that.
Yeah.
Which totally is the kind of the villain. Like, the villain's not a villain in their world.
Right. That's right. Yeah. He's
for a lot of people.
People don't think of Jordan Peterson as a dick. They think of him as a visionary. But that's because basically we're starved for good mentors. Yeah, and if you love Jordan Peterson, I apologize. So
no, you don't. You don't apologize. That guy sucks.
If you love Jordan Peterson, you're wrong.
Yeah.
All right. I think that probably covers about everything. I want to get our final thoughts, and then any endorsements, and if you could.
Well, by the way, Jason, so you were saying, I want to get back to the end because I want to tell you about my take when I saw.
Oh yeah, please. I'm so sorry.
So you said the whole big action sequence at the end just didn't work for you, in your opinion.
No, that's not it. I did enjoy it. I just felt like I wished that I wished that I had known it was coming, and I guess that's
Hmm.
not fair of me. But anyway, let's
I mean,
forget
that's the
about that
whole
for a
point
moment.
about the being a twist, though, right?
Yes, you're
I
right.
mean, in fairness,
Yeah.
I don't mean to I don't mean to slag you or anything, but it's like,
No, you're right. That's a
kind of how
totally
that. I don't know. It's kind of how maybe it's
well. That's
not
the
as
problem with
subtle as
rules in
Twilight
the
Zone,
movies.
but it's
Like movies are
kind of
supposed to have rules, and the scenes are supposed to follow the rules. So if the movie breaks the rules, it gets weird, and I guess that
I
can be
gotcha.
okay. It's a tough one, but if you go
See,
too far, you wind up with a movie with no rules, and that's an experimental movie, and you're either in the mood for it or not. This is not that. This is just a movie that I feel kind of breaks a rule, but that's okay.
I
Continue though.
opinion, like I'm totally down. I am in retrospect, and I think I was just watching it late. There is a couple of interesting things about there. I'm really curious about the look of kind of on the almost the last frame of the movie. And that I found interesting. They just kind of leave it. I don't know
What do you
if
just
anybody else
describe?
picked it.
What are you
I
talking
don't
about?
remember.
So we have our final girl,
Mhm.
and she's looking at the burning wreckage of the this. If you made it here, there's spoilers everywhere. Looking
Yeah.
at the yes, we set the frat
Yeah.
screw those Satan
That's right,
frat
yes.
guys. But there's the last few frames that hell to the turns into like a way more like a graver look, a
Huh.
look of realization of some sort, in my opinion. And I didn't notice the first time, and watching it now, I like watching it the other night was like, oh, I didn't pick up on that. Maybe
I
I'm
don't
wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much
No,
into
it very well could. I just have no memory. Do you think her awareness? Are you talking about the character becoming aware? Oh, well, for not for nothing, but we just murdered a whole bunch of people, or
I don't know. That was
Yeah.
they don't really, other than the stinger with the cat. There's a
Yeah.
stinger. There's a mid credit sequence.
I don't know if we saw that. What was the
No,
cat
we
thing?
did not see that. No, we
Oh,
missed it.
well, I don't know if you have it still able to rent it, but
We do.
yeah, watch the mid credits. There's
Okay.
again spoilers, I guess.
And
I
we
don't know.
can leave it a mystery for both us and for the listener.
But yeah, there was a subtle bit that I didn't pick up on the first time that I was curious about. But also for me, coming out of the theater, again, my life is my own, my path on things, my views are my own. But I was ready at the end for we've had enough of this, like, let's go from town to town destroying satanic fratties.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody pile back into our vans.
That's a good way to do a sequel to this.
More,
It is.
grab
Yeah.
some more cricket paddles, and we're going town to town to clean up terrible frat. And not again, not every frat is the worst or whatever. I'm talking about
Hashtag not all frats.
Yeah. I hate that. I kind of hate we're there.
Oh, I know.
But the type of date rape fratty things that go on,
Yeah.
I am I'm fine with that not being around. And again, this is because it's a movie, because it's a horror movie. Of course I don't want mass violence in reality, right?
Of course. Absolutely.
That's not something I want to advocate, that like, oh, there should be mass violence against. There should be more penalties on poor.
But I love your idea of a series where this girl goes town to town.
Just the crew that's left over, because
there are satanic toxic frats that need to be destroyed. That honestly, I
like almost in like
I'd pay to
Eldritch
watch that.
Cthulhu kind of, or like town to town.
Every time you say town to town, I sing packing and unpacking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Phantasm has the like where they go from town to town. They're trying to find the tall man.
Mm-hmm.
Or Kolchak, going from.
No, it's a good idea.
And I came out of theater going, I would watch a lot of hours of
Absolutely.
like revenge, because it's the movies. There can be revenge fantasy, and of course I would never advocate that like we should do this.
So yes,
other than terrible people get away with too many things, that is frustration. That comes from frustration in real life. But I would definitely watch a movie of the sorority sisters who are able to stick together.
I love it.
Taking down Eldritch, like frat house, horror.
We may just have to write it
kind of way. Yeah.
You can just do it as an unofficial sequel, because you may just have to write it and just do it.
Maybe
Newcastle of Horror anthology.
Yeah.
Yes.
Frat House of Horror.
Oh,
yeah.
I love
That's
that idea.
actually college campus edition, that being the prompt for a Castle of Horror anthology would
College
be great.
horrors is a good
Yeah.
idea. Yeah. I should mention, actually, in the most recent anthology we did, there is a sorority sister horror story that is super good. It's called Namaste, and it's these assholes take sorority
It's
sisters
a good
onto
name.
like a most dangerous game kind of thing. Oh, it's by
Mhm.
Jennifer Brody, and she's really brilliant. I mean, it's a good story.
That's
So yes,
awesome.
yeah, I know.
But
It just
that's definitely
it,
the movie I wanted to see as I came out. Like not that
yes,
the town to town taking out terrible people. Yes.
yeah.
And it could be, I mean, there's there's just as much bad. We've also seen a bunch of things where sorority sisters are really terrible and catty as well. So I don't know.
Well,
It could go either way. There could be a witchy.
is in the 2016 one.
I like
Or
this idea of the
2006.
like
Yeah.
toxic Greek system.
Yeah, I mean, there's all
wars
of
is a
that.
great
There's
idea.
a lot of room for just let's not be terrible people kind of horror. But anyway, that was what I wanted to see as I was coming out. I came out pretty pumped. I don't know
Excellent.
what it was.
That's wonderful.
I don't know, man. That's kind of, I don't know if that's good or not, because again, I'm not a
Well,
super
but
violent
this
person. but-
again, these are I mean, these are fantasies. And
Right.
so they're not supposed to reflect reality. Rape revenge does not mean that you actually believe in a policy of hunting down rapists and killing them, literally per se. Although maybe some of us do. But I mean, my point is, the movies are
Yeah.
supposed to be cathartic. They're symbolic, and so and that's something that's always worth remembering when like assholes come around wanting to ban movies for things that happen in the plot when they seem to be forgetting that movies are not real. But you're completely valid in going, I personally, whatever it is, child abuse, whatever, going, I don't care how symbolic it is. I don't want to see it. It's too close to me.
Mhm.
I'm too uncomfortable with it. So
Yeah, I mean, there's
that-
tons of stuff where I definitely am like, wow, this is, or that seems interesting, but right now in this period of time in my life,
right.
I'm not as enamored with seeing X, Y, or Z.
There's
And
a
I
lot of
think
us who get, animal cruelty, child cruelty, stuff like that. Would be like, I don't care how allegorical it is. I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah.
And
that's for everyone to decide. I'm also not one of those like, well, you should see it anyway because it says this or that. Like,
right.
what you put in your brain and what you want to live with in your head, I think is a lot of your own choice. I make different choices than I would have.
That kind of gatekeeping is
years-
uncool anyway. Like somebody going, "Oh, you're not a real horror fan unless you watch Cannibal Ferox." Like, you know what? No, screw you. That's like I can watch it.
I like the idea that I get to decide what kind of horror fan I am. But okay, especially being an adult. Like,
Yeah.
Oh wow, am I in high school again? Because I don't
Right.
think the last time I checked, I was still in high school. If
That
you
is
want to
just
stay in
really
high
funny.
school, that's good. Good on you.
It is so you're totally right.
going.
It's so weird that we're adults and yet there are people who can pretend to be gatekeepers about what
We
we
can't be
identify
friends
ourselves.
if you don't like this. I'm like, oh wow, thanks for letting me know. I think I made my choice. That you made my choice fairly easy there, buddy. That's amazing
Oh.
that you just decided for me.
Oh,
this
man.
this cuts out a lot of the middle stuff. Thank you.
All right, let's get our final thoughts. Black Christmas 2006 and 2019. I think we started with Tony, yes? No,
you started
Julia.
with me,
We started
yeah.
with Julia. Julia, which one was so I'm a little confused because you really had great things to say about 2006. So are
Yeah, I think I like them about equally for different reasons,
Mm.
because I really did. Yeah, I think 2006 feels more memorable in terms of like the effects and all that kind of stuff, but 2019 is more memorable in terms of the resolution, which is the creepy clan of misogynistic guys who are under the spell of sort of Carrie Elwes, but mostly the guy who founded the university. So that's all very interesting. So yeah, I think as far as like, theme, the 2019 one is very thought provoking and interesting. And then the 2006, I like to say, is just more traditional kind of, if you like, if you want a good Christmas sorority house slasher movie, then that's the way to go. But yeah, I think they're both enjoyable and have some really interesting shots, some interesting concepts, some interesting effects. Not so much interesting characters, really. Neither one of them has anybody that I would say was just like I was really connecting to that person and going, "Oh wow, this person is well developed." Neither one of them really has that. 2019 more than 2006, but but even not so much. But yeah, I think they're a fun ride.
Thank you very much. Tony, what about you?
I'm actually it's kind of interesting kind of now that I'm thinking about the course of this podcast. Like I would not have thought that you would enjoy 2006 one as much as you did, Julie. And that's interesting. Like I think that's cool. Like
Yeah,
this is, it's
that's
far
what
gone.
watching. What is it? 300
Yeah.
episodes, 300 horror
It's
movies will
yeah.
do to you.
It's funny that you're still
We've
listening to
watched
color
Julia.
commentary because I'm thinking that maybe by now you might
No,
like
I
horror
insist.
more than.
I insist on being color commentary. That's like my
but
my
but
claim.
I think they're different movies and so much different in flavor that it's interesting. I think if you want a more nowadays twist, the 2019 one is probably your go-to. And then if you want, like, I want all the gore and I want to really skewer, again, Coca-Cola Santa Christmas, then the 2006 is where it's at. It's like more of a traditional slasher movie. And I love that they kind of exist in the horror, and there's these, and you can watch the 74 one, and like you're gonna get these different flavors. And I think that's interesting. And I think that's a really interesting thing too, because a lot of people, remakes, but with these remakes you get enough different stuff that they're giving you something more each time.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not as on board for 2006, although it has a lot of merits, especially like the kills and what it's trying to do. It's really like you get exactly what, if you're watching that, you know what it wants. You know what you're in for that one. 2019, of course, takes a different twist on, is definitely here's what we want to say, rather than here's a slasher movie that is, kind of skewers Christmas, again, both figurative, literally. And I think that's great. Like I said, I do prefer 2019. I think we could go a lot more in depth. Like that's the one thing about doing a double feature is, we don't get to go into as much of the perhaps the nuance or all the kills or all the stuff like that.
Yeah.
We could go longer on that. But I think I like that we live in a world where you can get several different interpretations of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty cool. I would probably watch 2019 more than I would watch 2006, and that's just where my head's at, more than like, is there a real problem? I do find that, I think it's interesting too, though, Jason, where you're like, hey, I wish they would have telegraphed more in the 2019 one, when I think that the 2006 one is a little convoluted in what it's trying to accomplish, and the twists feel kind of like, I don't even know, but I could guess that works. But the amount of like back and forth between the flashbacks and just how things are revealed, it's, hey, swing for the fences if you're making a movie, right?
Yeah.
But I felt like it was a little bit more convoluted than it needed to be. But who am I to say? I mean, that's somebody's vision for how they wanted it to be. But that was my impression of it. It's fine, but it didn't stick with me in that same way. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that's happening kind of more than, but maybe it's just, you watch enough horror movies, like your mileage may vary on all of those choices, right?
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Drew, final thoughts.
I am glad that we talked about these. I still think I prefer the 2006 one just a hedge more, but they're both really fun examples of holiday horror. And I think if we inspire some people to do this double feature themselves, I think that I will be happy upon learning that, because I think that both of these are worth a view and they're a good time. And I also just like the fact that there are different versions of Black Christmas, and they're all crazy, weird movies across. Hopefully, if they do a fourth one, I hope they continue just mutating into weirder and weirder places, because that would be awesome. Good talk, everyone. Good talk.
Yeah. All right. So this is the moment when we come to endorsements, whatever you have to recommend or listen to, or you've been watching, or whatever. And I really have no idea what anybody's going to say, because I know that we've been so incredibly busy that I haven't been keeping up with what you guys have been watching. So, Julia, I mean,
Yeah, I'm
what?
trying to remember because it's been a couple of weeks. I don't remember if I talked about Glass Onion being really fun. I know I didn't talk about Wednesday, but everybody else has, so I think it goes without saying that Wednesday is awesome and hilarious and fun. I don't think that we've really watched anything else aside from just, holiday stuff. Jason's the Hallmark person. I'm not really the Hallmark person.
Right.
I do want to say, while we've been recording this, Argentina won the World Cup. So felicitaciones Argentina. Good for them. So that's exciting. I have not been an avid soccer or football watcher, but I understand that it was an exciting game. So congrats.
Awesome. Tony.
I'm trying to think because actually I was in the studio. That's going to be part of my endorsement.
Okay.
I was in the studio for over a week recording for the new Deserts of Mars album. So during that time, I was more practicing bass and less watching things. Although I watched a bunch of movies from the new Shaw Brothers box set, which is awesome. Post that, I have seen, Rain and I really enjoyed Troll, which if you want to see a Norwegian kaiju movie, if you like Troll Hunters, you'll probably like Troll. It's a little bit more by the book as far as, plot and just the way it goes, but awesome giant monster movie. And then also, since we'd been to Oslo a few years ago, when they did go to Oslo, I was like, oh, I wonder if we can see any of the places that we were. That was really enjoyable. I actually had a blast with that. But if any of the listeners are Deserts of Mars fans, because you were exposed to them through this, it'll be next year. We got like all of the bass done, all the drums done. Recording an album where you want like to take the time to restructure songs and really craft it takes time. So it'll probably be spring or summer before we release the album. But that's hey, spread the word if that's something that interests you. On I want to talk more about the album. I've also been crafting because it ends up that it's kind of, if everything goes as we plan, there's parts of it that are kind of a loose concept album. So I've also been putting on my world building, storytelling, writing hat to try to see if how to do that. And I know there was a recently a band who released a Dungeons and Dragons module to go with their album, and that was really cool. So I'm kind of
That's pretty neat. Yeah.
wondering if I'm kind of seeing if we could do some kind of sci-fi module. The band Bitskar released this cool. I mean, it's a cool idea. I was kind of envious that they were smart enough to release a D&D module to go along with their album. But so I'm doing all the world building on that too. So I'm getting back to doing some writing, doing some planning. But if that's your bag, be on the lookout. Tell people, hey, look, there's new music coming along. But in general, Troll and Shaw Brothers movies have been really where I've been sitting as far as endorsements go. And I think there's some other stuff. I've also been on a kick where I'm paying for the album, so I haven't bought as many Blu-rays and DVDs. So I haven't been oh, look, this came in, I'm gonna look at this new 4K, this or that. So we'll see. Maybe Santa will bring some interesting new movies. I don't know. I think Santa brought me an album or studio time, I think is what Santa really brought me this year. So
that's nice.
Because it's not cheap.
No, I hear you. Wow. Okay. Well, cool. And congratulations on wrapping up your recording. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. It's all the rhythm guitars, all the solos, all the vocals. We actually got rhythm guitar on one. So and in a day where when but I'll take what we got because it was all the bass tracks and all the drums. But yeah, I get to be the product manager of the band. So I'm looking at oh, I guess that's a quarter to the third of the way done, even though it is a lot done, right? But the reality is, got to keep on going in 2023.
Awesome. Drew, what about you?
So two things. One, I was recently in my hometown for a book signing, and afterwards I got to hang out with a couple of my high school buddies who were my D&D gaming buddies in high school, James and Brent. I know James listens to the podcast, so howdy, James. We
James.
got to play. Yeah, he says wonderful things about the podcast, by the way.
Aw.
But we got together and we played Marvel United, which is a card/figurine based game where you form a team of Marvel superheroes and take on a supervillain. Respectively, we fought both the Red Skull and Doctor Doom during our time. But it's a lot of fun. And it emphasizes teamwork, I think, better than any other similar games that I have come across, which I think is a awesome way to sort of recreate the comic book experience a little bit. So it might be a bit of an investment for people, and I would understand because there's like an X-Men pack, there's Spider-Man pack, a Fantastic Four pack, an Avengers pack. So I understand if it's not for everybody, but I had a really good time playing it. Second, I was exhausted from all my travels, and on Tuesday I decided that I was going to go take a nap, but I wanted some background noise on. And so I went on to HBO Max and I put on the Yule log setting that they had on there, which was sponsored by Adult Swim. And I didn't get a whole lot of sleeping done because I was completely taken aback in that the Adult Swim Yule log is actually a secret horror film, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It seems like the cat is more out of the bag about it than it was a week ago. Like, I thought I was dreaming at first. It was like a weird way to stumble upon it. And I think that was probably the best way to do it. But if you can go in blind and just get ready for progressive weirdness, I think I had a really good time watching that. The fact that they were able to even keep this a secret is kind of astounding to me, because like I said, I literally just put it on so there would be background noise while I was sleeping that would like cut out the city sounds. And I think that was the best way to stumble across it, because I'm like, what's happening? What am I watching? But it's still worth watching, I think, even if you didn't stumble across it, although it was an interesting way to find it. Anyway, that's that. Also, I want to say I wish more people were watching the Willow TV show, because I know there's a lot of fantasy TV shows out right now, but for my money, this is the most enjoyable, because it's literally like watching people play Dungeons and Dragons to me. Like,
man.
it's yeah,
like it?
It's so much fun. I really like it. I think
we'll have to
easily
talk
the best
sometime,
of the three fantasy shows. I really enjoying it. I think I'm kind of tired of heavy fantasy, like as good as Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones are. I think that there's like a self-seriousness about it that fantasy movies prior didn't really have, and this has a much lighter touch. So I don't know. I'm really digging it.
All right, I'm not gonna yuck your yum.
Don't yuck my yum.
We should talk sometime though. I'll tell you, or not. Maybe you just want to be like, sure.
I'm happy
with
in my
Grace,
enjoyment. I'm happy with my enjoyment of
That's awesome.
Willow.
Look, I'm always about, like, if something brings you joy, you know me. I'm gonna be like, I'm not having that same journey, and now I'm a little envious that you're having that journey, because I wish I wanted to like it so much more. But that's cool. That's awesome. That's why we have the world we have. Like, we can all.
That's why we have 3 versions of Black Christmas.
That's right.
Exactly. Right. So that's cool. That's actually, that's really cool that you're digging it. I wish I was digging it as much, but that's awesome.
Jason, what about you?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Yule log is an amazing work. So I absolutely But I gotta say, it does not get boring. It doesn't, people say things like it gets super crazy, and that's true, but it doesn't go off the rails. You stay engaged because it continues to keep threads going that make you, still in it. Basically, you're not like.
I do
I mean,
think it's appropriate to say that it is a bit dreamlike, though.
yeah, but for instance, Too Many Cooks, right, was more of a gag than an actual story.
Yeah.
Whereas this is an actual story. Yeah, it has dreamlike elements. It has lots of like very Lynchian kind of stuff, but you stay connected. The beginning wraps up at the end, so you're not sort of watching a bunch of loosely connected images. It's a story. So which is important to me. I want it to have coherence. So there we go. And my other endorsement actually is a book that I did not write, but that I published. Castlebridge Media published a new thriller this week called Lost Angel from Sam Knight, and it is the second in our midlife crisis thrillers, but this one takes place entirely around a Christmas parade. So
And Jason
this,
didn't write it, but he did have the nugget of the idea based
yeah,
on
yeah,
his
yeah.
his own experience with the Christmas parade, building a float for the dad's club at the elementary school.
Yes, in Grapevine, the Christmas capital of Texas. So when we
Shout out.
commissioned the book, we were like, I would like a story that takes place in this Christmas parade, and the organizer of the Dad's Club is suddenly accused of a terrible crime in the middle of the parade, and he has just a short period of time to prove himself innocent, and he's getting beat up all the time. So I really love it. It came out really great. It's called Lost Angel, and you should check it out. So yeah.
Happy Hanukkah to folks who celebrate. Merry Christmas this coming week to those celebrate that. Happy holidays, all
Yeah.
other ones.
Thank you for a
And
wonderful,
Happy New
wonderful
Year,
year.
since we won't see anybody till
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess
we will
year.
see you in the future.
In the
Yes,
future.
Exactly.
yes, because that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. I will.
If God willing and the creek don't rise.
Yes.
If you're listening to this in the future, don't spoil it for us because we're not
Yes.
there yet.
All right. Adios. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Night.
Happy holidays,
Dark
everyone.
Day.
Yeah.
Yes.